Folks, glad to have everybody here with us for our June 27th meeting. Welcome to our second Zoom meeting, our third online meeting, if you will. Glad to have everybody with us. We anticipate we'll have others continuing to join as the meeting goes along. So good to see everybody. The more the merrier. Hope everybody is doing well. We're going to have a few announcements here before we introduce our guest speaker, and then we will have a short business meeting after the question and answer session with our speaker today. So probably anticipate maybe here, probably maybe till about 12:30 or so, just kind of whenever we wrap up. But we'll hope that everybody's able to stay with us here through our guest speaker presentation and then also our short business meeting. So that said, I would like to go ahead and do our usual introduction of officers. I am the president of the Springfield Writers Guild this year for 2020, Chris Keller. We have here with us our entire board. Our vice president and publicity chair, Candy Simonson, is here with us today. We also have Matt Henderson, our secretary, with us here today. John Caulfield, our treasurer, here with us today, also our Zoom master, if you will. He's kind of keeping everything coordinated here online with us. Yvonne Irwin, our director at large. And then I don't know if we have Nick Whalen or Terry Smith. If we have you with us, welcome to our other officers. Nick Whalen is our coordinator, and Terry Smith is our webmaster. I know Terry in particular has been pretty busy. We've had a lot of announcements that we posted, being that we're doing a lot of things online. So definitely keep checking the website, the Facebook pages, and anything that we're connected with. We're going to keep putting the information out there to you. That said, it's time to introduce our guest speaker. Our guest speaker this month is a historian who writes about people, places, and events in Missouri that should be well known, but they're not. He's a teacher, a radio host, a newspaper columnist, and a speaker who's written 20 books and numerous magazine articles and newspaper columns. His Missouri history column is titled Back in the Day, and it's published weekly in newspapers across the state. Our speaker's bestseller, Missouri's Forgotten Heroes, was selected by the Ozarks Writers League as last year's best book of the year. He'll be sharing some personal insights from the book during his presentation today. He's a frequent guest on radio and TV stations in the state. Our speaker was described by one newspaper as being the czar of Missouri history. Members of the Guild, it's my great pleasure to introduce today's guest speaker. Please welcome Mr. Ross Malone.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Have a lot of family connections in Springfield and grew up in Lebanon, not far from here. And you know, I was very pleased when I got the invitation to come. And can you hear? Oh, okay. I hope that on your screen there is a picture of this day in Missouri history. Okay. This is just something that I do every day on Facebook. And if you're interested in what this looks like and like to receive these on your computer every day, go to Ross Malone-Missouri Writer. So it's Ross Malone-Missouri Writer on your Facebook. And it's just interesting to look back through history and see some of the things that have happened. I noticed some Springfield items on here. June 27th of 1910, Baker was sponsoring an auto caravan tour of Springfield and 24 other Ozarks towns. It was a 300-mile trip, which in those days was something amazing. But Studebaker wanted to prove how good their cars were. And well, in Springfield, they were searching all over for old cannon to decorate the new courthouse. So kind of I don't know what happened to the cannon. I don't think they're there anymore. But anyway, it was kind of interesting to see what was happening in those days. And I have lost my little deal along the side here. That's okay. Here we go. I just wanted to point out this is something pretty special. Since we're writers and we all might appreciate this, I bought a writing kit to help you write your books. I got this from IKEA, and this is what it looks like. And if you've ever bought anything from IKEA, then you'll understand what it's about. They do also have a more of a formal kit where the book just almost writes itself, but the stories come out almost exactly the same every time. And they don't sell very well except on the Hallmark. So having said that, let's move on with the real stuff. This book, I'll explain a little bit because we are all writers. This book had an unusual origin. I did a PowerPoint presentation about people that we should be famous, but we've forgotten them. They were great heroes maybe in their day. And some of them we've forgotten way too soon. They're actually should be heroes right now. But anyway, I did this for the Missouri State Teachers Association, and then I did the same program for the Missouri Association of School Librarians, and then a couple of homeschool conventions. And in each case, they said, you really should write those down and turn them into a book, and it would be a valuable resource. Well, they were thinking of something for their students. I was thinking of something for adults that would be enjoyable reading. So there's lots and lots of short stories in this book, and it's been really well received. It's my bestseller so far. Here's someone. This is a fun group. They were from close by here, and in this part of the state, there are some people who still remember the All-American Redheads. They were a traveling team of women's basketball players centered around Cassville, Missouri, and they traveled all over, literally all over the world as goodwill ambassadors to the U.S. They once played 96 straight games in 96 days, and they won all of those. They were kind of like the Globetrotters, except when they played the Globetrotters, they beat the Globetrotters. They were really, really good. And they had some adventures too. They were on a goodwill tour in the Philippines when Pearl Harbor was bombed. And everyone was scrambling. They said the Japanese will be here at the Philippines next. Of course, was just about right. And everybody took every kind of conveyance they could to get out of the Philippines. But these women were there, and they had no pull at all, and they were stuck. But they finally managed to get out on various cattle and hog boats, and I think they all met up in Guam and made their way back home. But they were quite a group, and very interesting to read about. They are in the Basketball Hall of Fame. But here in Missouri, we've forgotten. What a shame. The next group here, if you'll look, this is called a Skinner ladder truck. And over on the far left, there's a mustachioed man, and his name was Phelim O'Toole. He was a very interesting Irish immigrant. Thought he was going to have a life at sea, but somehow or another, he ended up in St. Louis and lived in what they call the Kerry Patch, the Irish slum in St. Louis. Got lucky, got a good job, St. Louis Fire Department, and he was the foreman of this ladder truck. And what we remember Phelim for is his ingenious way that he could rescue people. When everyone else would give up, he found a way to get people out of it. The most famous thing, the thing that he's most famous for, was a day when the largest building in St. Louis, which was the Southern Hotel, caught fire. And they had something new called elevators. And the flames went right up the elevator shaft like a chimney on an old kerosene lamp. And they ignited the rest of the building. And so the ladder trucks were called to get people out. They couldn't dream of using the stairs or the elevator shafts. They were full of fire. So these ladder trucks were set up all around the building. Thousands of people came to watch. The ladder trucks would only reach to the fifth floor, had 6 stories. So the people on the 6th floor were trapped. And I'll tell you what happened. You may not believe it, but like I say, thousands of people witnessed it. It's well documented. Phelim O'Toole climbed the ladder up to the 5th floor with a big coil of rope around him, And as he got near the top, he was yelling to the people, tie bed sheets together. And by the time he got to the top, bed sheets were starting to appear out the window, tied tightly together. He hooked that rope to the top of the ladder, and then he swung back and forth like a pendulum until he could reach the bed sheets. He climbed up the bed sheets, got a woman, carried her down the bed sheets, and got back to his rope and swung back to the ladder, carried her down to the street. And then he went up and did it again. He saved 12 people. It's just an amazing, amazing thing. So they had a big ceremony, and they painted a portrait of him. This is what we're seeing now. And that's how an ordinary fireman happened to have a portrait painted. This big ceremony, they gave him a medal. They gave him a check for $750, probably about the same as a month's pay. And he thanked them profusely and turned the check over, endorsed it, and gave it to the charity, to a head of an orphanage. So he not only was a great guy, he had a great big heart too. Just one of the greatest heroes that we could ever have. But how do you forget him? And this is the kind of person I thought be remembered for the students and all. That's why I started on this project, with people just like this, who should be remembered not because of what they accomplished alone, but also because of what great people they were, what an inspiration, and what a great role model for today's youth. This is a guy that most people don't remember. Again, if you go up around Corder, Missouri, where he was born and grew up, people there know of him, but the rest of us don't seem to. Lieutenant Harold Schreier was a Marine. In World War II, a submarine or other conveyance would take him to an island that was occupied by the Japanese, drop him off, and he would sneak around by himself, get information about troop strength and what artillery they might have, just any kind of information that might be valuable. And then he'd get back to his pickup point, get back aboard the submarine, and take his information to where it could be put to use. And if that wasn't brave enough, I mean, he did similar things in the Korean War. He has so many decorations and medals, but what he's best remembered for, or should be maybe, was when he was in the Battle of Iwo Jima, and he was in charge of a squad of men that was given the task of climbing to the top of Mount Suribachi, and they planted the flag at the top. And so here was this group of men led by a man from Corder, Missouri, and they're the most iconic image probably of all World War II, and yet we seem to have forgotten him. He's one of our forgotten heroes. Sacred Son was an Osage woman who, and by the way, I'm just hitting on a few of the people from the book. There are many, 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 and we don't have time to talk about it, and you'd get bored hearing me talk that. But Sacred Son was an Osage woman who lived up in the area where Arrow Rock is now, and she was approached, she and several others, by a Frenchman who wanted to take them to Europe so Europeans could meet the Native Americans, especially those from the Osage tribe. And 6 or 12 of them agreed to go with him. And they loaded a bunch of pelts and skins aboard the flatboat and took off down the Missouri River to St. Louis, where they would sell the pelts to pay for the trip. But just before they got there, the whole thing overturned. They lost all that. But still, they managed to get to Europe. And somehow, by the time they got to France, that's the first place where they stopped, the people knew they were coming. And there was a huge crowd of people at the docks waiting to see them. Oh, and also when they lost all that money, I should have said this, they started out with 12 people, 6 of them turned around. So there was just the 6 Native Americans. And when they got to France, they were literally treated like royalty. And they dined with the royalty of Europe. They stayed at the best hotels. They ate the best food. And everything was just great until the newness wore off and people stopped paying for tickets to come and see the Native Americans. So the Frenchman was having trouble paying his bills. And one night he just left. and he left these 6 Osage stranded, and I can't even remember what country they were in at the time, but they had no way to get home. They had no way to take care of themselves, the language barrier, whatever. So they decided they would try to do what the Frenchmen had been doing and just promote themselves and get people to pay for ticket money, come and see them, maybe have a meal with them and all. And it didn't work. And they were just having a terrible time. And Sacred Son was having a rougher time than most, and nobody could figure out quite what was wrong with her till they discovered that she was pregnant. And so anyway, her husband was there until they left for home, and he died aboard ship. But he must have been in on the decision too. But here's how tough things were. She had twins, and at one point she made the decision to sell one of the twins, and she knew that that child would have a good life, you know, and have everything that this wealthy French couple could offer. But you know, imagine she had to give up one child, but by doing that, she was able to feed the other. So she was really looking out for both. Tragedy, heroism, I mean, her story is really something, but it doesn't end there. The Marquis de Lafayette heard about their plight, and he bought passage for them to get back to the United States. And some of the remaining 6 made it, and some did not. Her husband was one who died along the way on that voyage. They got back to the East Coast, and the president asked them to come to Washington. And when they were there, that's where this portrait was painted. And it's in the, I forget the name of the gallery, the National Native American, something like that. And that's how we're fortunate enough to have this good portrait of her. And that's why there's 1 child instead of 2. And I think that's a Jefferson medal the child is holding on to, a Jefferson Peace Medal from Lewis and Clark. I'm not sure. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the next. Butch O'Hare. He grew up in St. Louis. His father was an attorney there. Butch went to St. Louis University. Lived in the Soulard neighborhood above a grocery store. Later, made some money and did well and moved out to the Holly Hills neighborhood. And he spent his whole life either living in St. Louis or on various aircraft carriers or naval air stations. But if you go to Chicago, there's O'Hare Airport, and they've got the plaques there that say, named in honor of our native son. Truth is, he never lived a day of his life in Chicago. He was a Missourian through and through, but he did go with his father to Chicago on a lot of business trips. And his father was an attorney, specialized in taxes, and he's the guy who turned over the information that got Al Capone put in jail. And that's why he was shot to death, shotgunned on a street, just walking down the street in Chicago. But Butch here was fortunate. They think maybe Paul Harvey was the one who had this theory that his father made a deal with the feds that, you know, if I give up this information, I want my son's education guaranteed. And he got to go to Annapolis, became a Navy pilot. But he's best remembered for his flying abilities, but he also, the one thing he did, he came back to his aircraft carrier. He was the first one to return from a sortie, and his aircraft carrier, the Lexington, was being attacked by 16 Japanese planes, which he shot down or drove. So, you know, quite a guy, and that's where we get O'Hare Field, and all. He's Missourian through and through. John Coulter was one of the most important members of Lewis and Clark's expedition. And as they went up the Missouri River, right in the middle of the state, he spotted a place and he said, someday that would be just the place to settle. If a person was to be a farmer, that would be the place. And he went on, and he was, like I say, very important on their expedition. They left him at one point to explore the Yellowstone territory, he and one other man. And you may have read about how they were caught by the Blackfoot Indians and how they had to escape. The natives stripped them down, had not even shoes. They had to run across the rocks and the prickly pear cactus and all that while the natives hunted them. They caught the other guy. We didn't catch John. He did make it back to Missouri. He did settle on that farm, and he also turned in all his notes about the Yellowstone territory. And people just refused to believe that there was a place where the ground was all red and yellow, and water shot up out of the ground, steaming hot water. The ground shook, and said, "It sounds more like hell. Are you sure that's, a place out west?" Anyway, they called it Coulter's Hell. That was the name of it for quite a while. But when it became our first national park, they thought that probably wouldn't attract people to come visit. They named it Yellowstone, as the Indians had done. And by the way, John Coulter married an Osage woman, and they had a large family, and the family still gets together every year at New Haven, Missouri, where this neat farm was. There's a John Coulter Museum there, and it's really important in that part of the state. Moses Austin was a man who started Herculaneum, Missouri, started Potosi, Missouri. Seemed like there was another town too, but he was a lead miner and a merchant, especially around Potosi. And he had a vision one day. His son was really kind of running the business, and he was a state representative, his son was. And he was a very responsible man. So Moses took off on this vision and went down across the Southwest, went through the Ozarks, went through the short grass prairies, went across the desert, all the way to Mexico, where he met with the leader of Mexico. And he said, "I've got an idea." He said, "There's this place, this territory you have called Tejas, and you're having so much trouble trying to keep the natives there from rebelling." And said, "I know it's using more army than you have." So he said, I'm from Missouri, when we have all these really tough miners there. And, we've learned to get along with the Indians. And if we have to stand up for ourselves, we know how to do that. And if you would make it profitable for our people to move, we'd like to move into Tejas. And we would just set up, our community there. And the guy says no, but Moses left, and on the way home, he was stopped. A rider had caught up with him and said, "The emperor changed his mind, and you can bring those pioneers into Tejas." And so he went. Trouble is, when Moses got home, he was deathly sick. I mean, deathly. He had something had happened on the way back. He caught something, and he did not recover. So under the laws of the day, his son had to take over the responsibilities, and his son, Stephen Austin, took the pioneers from Missouri into Texas, and Stephen then was named Father of Texas. And I'm kind of thinking that maybe Moses deserves that honor also. John Wesley Donaldson was one of the neatest guys ever. He played in the Negro Leagues. He played for a lot of different teams. He was a wonderful baseball player. He was a pitcher. He struck out over 5,000 men in his career. No one else has ever done anything like that. Any team he played on, they had to make a big decision. They might want to have him be the leadoff hitter because he was always the fastest man on the team. They might want to have him bat cleanup because he was always the best batter on the team. This guy was great. In addition to that, and he was from Glasgow, Missouri. In addition to all that, he never smoked, drank, he never cursed. In all his years of baseball, he was never known to have had an argument with anyone. He was just a go along, get along, great kind of a guy. And again, he's one that really should be a good role model for people. That's why I put him in that book. Not long after he, by the way, he's not in Cooperstown because he had just taken over as manager of the Monarchs when Jackie Robinson went to the big leagues, and he and John saw what was coming, and so he left the Negro Leagues and joined the Chicago White Sox as a scout. And there he brought huge numbers of really great baseball players into the big leagues. And he finally had a disagreement and he quit, but he was trying to get them to look at these three guys, and the Chicago White Sox said, you know what, we have enough black players on the team. I don't think we want any more black players. And he said, but you got to see these guys. There's one named Willie McCovey, and one is Hank Aaron, and who was the other one? Great player for the Cubs. Anyway, pretty great, of the greatest players ever. And the White Sox wouldn't look at him and wouldn't look at them. And so John says, well, you guys just aren't taking me seriously anymore. So that's when he retired. But a great, great guy. Now, there's a little bit more to the story, because shortly after this book came out, like 2 weeks after, some guy in Minnesota got hold of it. I don't know just how that happened, but he called and said, I understand you wrote about John Wesley Donaldson. And he said, I'd like for you to join with me and write a letter to the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame in Springfield, Missouri. And this guy needs to be inducted. And so we nominated John Wesley Donaldson, and May before last, I was able to come to Springfield and see him get inducted into the Missouri Baseball Hall of Fame, or Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. And right now, let's see, in 2 months, they will dedicate the new statue and the new baseball field in Alaska. One of statue of him, the baseball field. So, great guy. Jane Froman, some of you might recognize that name. There was a music producer once who was asked, who do you think are the 10 best female singers? And the guy said, well, that's pretty easy. He said there would be Jane Froman and 9 others. And that's just about the way things were. She was great. She was a wonderful person that everybody liked. She had a major problem, though. As she grew up, she had a terrible life. Her parents argued and fought, and Jane stuttered terribly, but she didn't stutter when she sang. And so that was where she found her outlet. That's where she found her meaning in life, and that's what she practiced, did so well. My favorite part of her life came in World War II. She wanted to entertain the troops. She wanted to just give her time and travel and entertain the troops. But they told her, no, you can't do that. The USO said, we don't send women into the combat zone. So, no, just sorry, can't be done. She wouldn't take no for an answer. She got a ride on a plane with the Red Cross going toward the war effort, but with the Red Cross. As they came into Portugal to land, the plane went down and crashed in the river. And she had just traded seats with the woman, and that woman was killed in the crash. Jane lost the use of her legs, and she, felt guilty the rest of her life because of that. But if you can imagine, she still wanted to sing. She lost the use of her legs, but somebody had the bright idea to put her on a big stool, like a kitchen stool or something, with casters on the bottom. And she'd wear a big full dress to cover the school, and she'd go out on stage and she'd dance around with the men who were just wheeling her all over the stage, and she would sing. And the troops absolutely loved it, especially when she entertained at hospitals or something, because they knew she had been injured in the war effort, and she was one of them. And she came back to Missouri eventually and started a camp up in central Missouri near Columbia for kids who were musically talented. There may be you may have an opportunity to see a movie called With a Song in Her Heart, and I believe Rita Hayworth is the star of that movie. It's the Jane Froman story. John Barry Meacham was a real no-nonsense kind of a guy. He was a slave in Kentucky, but his owner, I hate to even use the word, the guy who held John's papers said, here's the deal, John, I've got all this work that needs to be done, but when you get finished with that, if you want to do some work on your own, you can earn money and it's yours. And so John had learned how to make barrels. He became a cooper. And so he started making barrels. And in those days, barrels were the shipping container. That was used for everything from pickles to crackers, and, you know, pickle barrels, cracker barrels, and everything you can imagine, oats, well, grain of all kind, everything was shipped in barrels. You could sort of stand it on its edge and roll it from place to place. And so it was, you know, move a lot of weight, and one man could do it. So it was a practical thing. But John was really good. And he sold a lot of barrels. First thing you know, he had enough money, he bought his freedom. Next, he wanted to buy his wife's freedom and his children, but they were owned by someone else. And that someone else moved to where things were booming. He moved to St. Louis, took John's wife and children with him. So John moved to St. Louis. And we couldn't believe his eyes when he got there. There were as many as 70 boats, steamboats tied up at the levee all at one time. And probably millions of barrels went through there in a month's time. They needed barrels desperately. So John started making barrels. And his barrels got the reputation of being good ones and strong and useful. And he sold more than he could handle, and he started hiring people. And then he became controversial because he got this idea of using slaves. And John Berry Meacham, the former slave, started buying slaves. But he told them, as soon as you get a rudimentary education and a skill so you can make your own way in the world, and the education so people won't cheat you, as soon as you do those things, you can have your freedom. And so he bought slaves, prepared them for the world, and then set them free. And a lot of people are down on John now because he bought slaves. But I don't know, to me, he did so much more good than he did harm. And talk about a no-nonsense kind of guy. He started the first school for black children in Missouri, and that went on for quite a while, but then the sheriff came one day and said, John, we're getting complaints. It really is against the law in Missouri for black children to go to school. So you're gonna have to close the school. Well, John had used his money to salvage sunken steamboats, and that was a side business that he had going. So he was salvaging and repairing steamboats, selling what had been on there, their cargo, and then he owned the boat, and that was the way the law was at the time. So John took one of those steamboats, told all the students, meet down at the levee in the morning, and told them just where on the levee. And he took that boat, sailed it just across the middle of the Mississippi to where he was in where he was in Illinois, and they had school every day. And that's called the Freedom School. And so anyway, there's hardly anybody who remembers John Meacham. There is a park in Kirkwood named for him, but that's about it. His house was also, they found out later, fairly recently, it was a stop on the Underground Railway. But John Berry Meacham, quite a guy. I'm going to skip about Phoebe Hearst, except just she was a lady from Franklin County, Missouri. She was a school teacher, and she helped to start. Susan Blow actually started this movement to have kindergartens, free public kindergarten. But Phoebe Hearst did more than anybody else to help get that movement going. Phoebe also started an organization called the Congress of Parents of Teachers, which later became the PTA. Her husband, George Hearst, was also from Franklin County, Missouri, near Sullivan. And Phoebe taught there in a little log school. But George came home for his mother's funeral and met Phoebe. She was quite a bit younger, but anyway, they fell in love, and they married, and she went with him. He had left Missouri to go look for minerals, and he had made a fortune in gold, silver, copper, all these various minerals he found in the West. And some of you may have been to a home that she designed. It's called Hearst Castle out in California. And her son was William Randolph Hearst, who was quite a notorious newspaperman. And some of you will even remember her granddaughter, who was kidnapped and by the Symbionese Liberation Army, and she turned bank robber when she was held by them, Patty Hearst. So anyway, there's lots more to her story. Whitehair, in the Osage language, Pawhuskett, was probably the greatest of all the known Osage chiefs. And he was the go-to guy. Every time something needed to be done in dealing with the Osage, you had to talk with Whitehair. Had an interesting story how he got his name. You know, they gave each other names according to various important things in their lives. And when he was a young brave, they got into a battle with these British soldiers. And, you know, the British wore the red coats and all this. And so they got into this battle. And at one point, Pawhuskett got, he, you know, hit this soldier, thought he'd killed him, but he hadn't. Jumped on him, grabbed his scalping knife, got hold of the guy's scalp. And just as he was about to begin, the guy regained consciousness. And he saw what was happening, and he screamed and jumped up and ran away. And Pawhuskett was standing there holding the guy's white scalp, which was actually a wig, you know, the white powdered wigs the British wore. And so he was looking at that thinking, wow, this thing has real strong medicine, you know, powerful medicine. It saved the owner's life, but now I have it. And so I've got the medicine. And so it was a very cherished thing. And people, since he had that powerful, powerful medicine, they named him for that day. And that's how he got the name Whitehair. His son, well, I'll tell you more about him in a minute. He had a son called Young Whitehair, and he had a son called No Ears. I'll get there. Big Soldier is another guy I wanted to mention, also called Great Protector of the Land. He was even more than Whitehair, was the go-to guy, and you'll see his name on many, many, many treaties that were signed with the Osage through the years. When Whitehair died, his son, Young Whitehair, inherited the wig, and he was chosen as the new chief of the Osage. But he had a younger brother who really coveted that position. Young Whitehair wasn't a very good chief. No Ears really wanted it. And so he started all his political activities trying to overthrow his brother, not by force, but by being selected. That's the way the Osage did it. No Ears started giving things to people who would support him. When he ran out of things to give away, he started taking from other people and giving them to the people who supported him. So way back when, this was basically a Stone Age culture, and they had, what do we call that? Redistribution of wealth. So, you know, one politician taking things from one group of people to give to another, right? So nothing's new in this world, I guess. But they spent a lot of time in and around Fort Osage, and we know a lot of this, frankly, because the wife of the head at Fort Osage wrote all this down. Mary Easton Sibley was her name, wonderful lady. But there were soldiers there also, and one of the soldiers one day asked the other Osage, "Why do you call him No Ears, this guy who was such a politician? Why do you call him No Ears? He obviously has ears." And they said, "Well, he's like other people you probably know," said, "he talks a lot, but he never seems to be able to hear what we're saying." So he was a consummate politician, I guess. Paul Henning, oh, I bet people in this area recognize that name because of the new Paul Henning State Park. Paul Henning was a guy from, I think, University City up in St. Louis County. His wife was from Independence, and Paul went to work for KCMO in Kansas City, where he met his wife, and he was in charge of sort of, I guess you'd say, creative things there. And he performed a lot when they had a lot of live music on the air. His wife did sometimes also. But his real goal in life was to be a screenwriter. He wanted to write for television, possibly maybe one day be a playwright. But he knew to be a screenwriter, he had to go to Hollywood. So he and his wife went out to Los Angeles, and he struggled and struggled and struggled and just couldn't catch a break. And one day he got on, Fibber McGee and Molly, an old radio program, and they loved his work. And he got some good vibes from that, and he got invited to help write for other things. First thing you know, he was writing for all kind of radio programs, and TV came along, and he was asked to write for some pretty good television programs also. But while they were there, his wife always told him stories about when she lived at Tuscumbia, Missouri, and went to Eldon, Missouri in the summertime. She and a couple of pretty cousins of hers worked at their aunt and uncle's hotel, which happened to be right next to some railroad tracks. And all these people would come through, and all these funny things happened there at the hotel. And he took those stories of hers and turned them into a TV show called Petticoat Junction. And then later, he drew from his camping with the Boy Scout camping experiences down around Branson, and he put those kind of memories together and some of the characters he had run into, and he created the Beverly Hillbillies. And he also wrote the song, The Ballad of Jed Clampett. And then he always wanted to come back to the country. What people said about him was, when you've met Paul Henning, you've met a real Missouri farm boy. And he never lived on a farm, but he always wanted to. But he ended up writing another TV series about a man who wanted to go back to the farm, but his wife really didn't. And that, of course, was Green Acres. And so he gave us, those are the things we remember him for the most. And I wanted to point out that he came up with something else, and I think he called it cross-pollination or something. But if you look at the lower right picture, you'll see the couple from Green Acres is at the Shady Rest Hotel there at Petticoat Junction. And that blonde in the background there, that's their daughter, by the way. So it's kind of a crazy idea to have people from one TV series show up in another TV series. And they did it, and people loved it. So he did it over and over and over again. So it's time to wrap things up. And so just want to mention forgotten heroes we're talking about. Well, here are some forgotten heroes. Tom Akers. This is from our time period, folks. Tom was the principal at Eminence High School, and over on Current River. Some of you have been to Eminence, tiny little town. And some recruiters came in, Air Force recruiters, to talk to the juniors and seniors about, they might like to join the Air Force, and maybe they could learn mechanics, maybe they could learn to fly. Shoot, they might even end up being an astronaut, who knows? And Tom listened to that, and first thing you know, he's an astronaut. He grew up and was educated in Eminence, went to school at Rolla and at Mizzou. And this is Linda Godwin. Linda grew up at Jackson, Missouri, which is the county seat for Cape Girardeau County. And she went to school at Jackson High School, went to Southeast Missouri State, and to school at Rolla, I believe. And then the next one, Janet Lynn Cavandi, is from Carthage in Jasper County. We ran into a friend of hers one time, and she said, when Janet was in high school, she was like queen of the geeks. And she meant that as a compliment. She said Janet was so pretty and so intelligent that she intimidated all the boys, and she just, you know, wasn't real popular because she was just a level above so many people, but she was always super nice. Everybody liked her. And then of course she got to college. Hey, there are a lot of people there who she had more in common with maybe, but she went to a junior college in that area, and I've forgotten the name of it. And anyway, all public college, and teaching at Mizzou now. And then look at this next one. Oh, Michael Hopkins from Lebanon. Well, he was born in Lebanon, but he actually grew up at Richland nearby there. His parents were farmers. He grew up on a farm. His mother was a teacher, so he went to school with her each day at School of the Osage at Osage Beach. So real neat guy, also public school guy. It doesn't require that you go to, you know, to be somebody special. I always try to tell my students when I'm talking to them that, you know, you don't have to go to MIT or something. These people have all been high achievers with their public school education. And then the last one, Bob Benkin, took a spacewalk yesterday. He's up there right now at the space station, and he's from University City in St. Louis County. And I believe he's another public school guy. I'm not sure about that, but anyway, got all these very special people that just came from, you know, ordinary families like those we see around us all the time. I hope they don't turn out to be forgotten heroes, but frankly, you probably didn't recognize their names as we went through them. Just so I'm afraid they're kind of destined for that too. A lot of these heroes, I think, never be forgotten. And so these are some of the books. If you would ever be interested in buying books about Missouri, I do write about little known people, places, and events. And that's my webpage, rossmalone.com. Thank you very much. I think we have questions now. Is that correct?
Yes, we are now open for question and answer for our guest, Ross Malone. Folks, please feel free. They will have to ask questions for Mr. Malone, you will have to unmute your system. Do we have a question?
Like I might need to mute mine also.
Is your book available at Amazon or locally, or?
Amazon, of course. But really, I think the best place is rossmalone.com.
Okay. Sounds very interesting.
Are they available on any shelves in Springfield?
I don't think so.
I
don't know of a single place in Springfield
where the books, other than libraries. They're in school libraries, they're the Greene County Library. I'm sorry? Talk to Hall Bass. Talk to Hall Bass?
Yeah, we'll live. He's not on here.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah.
Question. Where did you go to school?
Where did I go to school?
Yeah.
That's the question?
Yes.
Okay. I'm hearing you from someone else's computer, otherwise we're getting feedback, so I have to mute mine. I went to school
At Lebanon High School, and got kicked out of a couple of schools before that, but that's a whole nother story. No, I was in a different attendance district, as you know, I didn't really get kicked out. But anyway, graduated from Lebanon High School and went to Mizzou and got my bachelor's there, and then went to Illinois State and started. I thought I was going to be a school administrator, and found out a little bit more about it. Decided, no, I like what I'm doing. I don't think I'll do that. And I went on to University of Missouri St. Louis to study counseling. Any other questions?
Ross, what was your first book, and what got you started doing the history type books?
Hey, hi, Tim. And you asked, I think, what got me started. Good to see you. We're Facebook friends. At least I follow you on Facebook. I hope you might want to mention this to others. If you go to on Facebook, Ross Malone - Missouri Writer, I do put This Day in Missouri History on every single day, and it's free. So Ross Malone Missouri Writer. But Tim, I was always had this yearning to be on the radio, and I'd done a little bit way back in high school when Jim Bohannon was just getting started, because you know he was from Lebanon also, and we were real good friends. But then I didn't get to do any after that. And then when I retired from teaching, there were a couple local radio stations, and I was kind of, you know, feeling around, hoping I could maybe work my way in somewhere, you know. And I had a friend who had a show on one of the stations, and eventually he went to the second station, and he had me on doing little 5-minute spots about life in Missouri. And so I took stories that I had used for teaching, and I started doing those on the radio, and people would write in and, or would call in, I mean, and say, I wish you'd write those down. I'm trying to remember the details so I can tell my husband, and I just wish you'd write them down. So I picked 100 and put them in Tales from Missouri and Tales from Missouri and the Heartland, my first book. And that's kind of how I got started. And then I did a school edition of that same book to be used in 4th grade classrooms. And just after that, I don't know, it just kind of erupted. And all these books, and my wife's sitting here, she can tell you that I dream about these books sometimes when I'm in the middle of writing a book, and some of you may have that happen. The characters start coming to you at night, and you wake up and you say, I know what's going to happen next. Or guess what? I thought it was going to be such and such. And, you know, and I kind of wore out as I do a lot of research online, I kind of wore a path in the carpet between my study and the kitchen where I'm, you know, Doris, you got to hear about this. You aren't going to believe this. And I just love finding all this interesting stuff. But anyway, it was the radio station that got me, and I ended up doing, had the morning drive show on one of the stations, the morning drive with Ross and Ray. And that went for a while, and then they changed the format and went to country music and did away with the talk. But anyways, it's a fun thing, and now Doris and I just love traveling around. We go all over the state, and do presentations, and meet some of the most interesting people. And a lot of times it's a chance to stay in a nice hotel, or you know, to have some nice meals. We got a few favorite restaurants we try to go to from time to time. Today we're going to try Jose Loco. I got to try that the other day, and I said, Doris, you're going to love it. So that's where we're headed after the meeting. So you know, life is good. This is a great way to spend retirement.
Thank you, Ross. It's good to see you.
How you organize your research? Okay, how I organize my research. Wow.
It really is different from one thing to another. Like with the Missouri Heroes book, that was very purposeful. I went searching for people that I thought would be good heroes. And then it's funny, after that came out, people started bringing me others. And someone said, well, you wrote about John Donaldson, but I don't see anything in here about Zach Wheat. Well, you should hear this Zach Wheat and what a character he was. And his father was an Englishman. His mother was Native American. And he set records. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame too. The Highway 13, the Kansas Expressway here, goes up through the northern part of the state. And in the northern part, it's called the Zach Wheat Memorial Highway. But just some of the stories came to me, you know, because people would read my stuff and then bring me others. The newest book, Bicentennial Stories, I had an idea to write this book, and Doris actually was the one who said, why don't you pick one story for each decade? Well, I couldn't narrow it down that much. So I've got 2 or 3 stories for every decade, and a lot of newspaper articles, because I collect the newspaper articles. And those put together, I think, give you a real idea, a real feel for what life was like in each of those decades. So sometimes I sit down with a very purposeful, and I would say that was with the children's books that I do, children ages 9 to 14. I did a series of adventure books that are very detailed Missouri history, very historically accurate. One of them's about Monette, which is not far from here. Others, gosh, I had one book. I like to enter writing contests. And so one book has a lot of contest winners. The book's called Pick of the Crop. And so since it has contest entries, it has more fiction than my other books. I just basically don't write fiction. But that book does, it's loaded with fiction.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
I have one. Specifically for like kids' books, nonfiction. I was curious, how do you, like I learned how to cite sources in high school for like an academic paper, but in a book or like a kid's book, how do you properly cite your sources? Like, is there a bibliography at the end, or do you make footnotes, or how does that work?
Okay, I know Katie Bennett was talking, but I couldn't hear a word of it. So. Can someone?
Oh, can you hear me now?
No, I don't write documentaries or, it's these are historical fiction. Now, at the end of each book, I have what I call author's notes, and I have photographs, and I explain where the different elements of the story came from. But no, the stories I've written for kids are historical fiction. And I don't have to say, for instance, in Tobias and the Governor, I don't have to say where I knew that the orphan trains were rolling through Missouri in 1911. They were. I mean, it's just, you can see that anywhere, any number of sources. I don't have to say that they started their streetcar system in 1911. They just did. Or they had a baseball team called the Jeff City Senators, a semi-pro team. That's just fact, and I don't really, in writing historical fiction, I just didn't feel the need to put footnotes in there. I think kids see footnotes and they probably aren't going to read the book. But the author's note at the end of the book, which is several pages, I do explain that sort of thing.
The reviewing officer for today's ceremony is the Commanding General of the United States Army Combined Arms Center, Lieutenant General James T. Rainey. The host commander for today's ceremony is the Commanding General of the United States Army Maneuver Support Center.
Alrighty. Folks, if we have no other questions, I know can't necessarily hear everybody clap the whole time, but we'd like to thank Ross for coming down and giving us this presentation today. Very informative, and again, his books are available via his website and other sources. Ross, anything that you'd like to say in closing?
No, I just think keep writing. It's a wonderful way to accomplish something, and especially anything we can write down about the way life is today. I'm keeping notes on the coronavirus. I think the story's not going to get told accurately. I've seen so much history get revised, and I think there's a real move right now to erase history and change that. I have Irish ancestry, and for 700 years, the English ruled that island, and they changed the place names. They took down all their monuments. They changed the language. They forbade them to speak their own language. They attacked their churches, and see it in a historical perspective, and you think, gosh, that's kind of what's going on today. So I think we can't control what's happening in a bigger area, but I do think we can make notes about what our life is like, and give a real perspective. There are some people who, Tim Ritter is a good example. Tim writes about history, but he also writes about things that are going on right now. Wayne Groner, another man from this group, helps people to publish their family histories. What in the world could be more valuable than that? You know, to get the family histories published, to preserve what's real, and to learn from it. I just posted a thing on my Facebook page. It won't show up. It's scheduled to show up in a few days, about a man named Oda Genga. And he was a pygmy who came to the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis. And he was one of the most popular characters at the fair. And he loved America. And so people found out he was looking for an opportunity to stay in America. New Yorkers offered to give him free room and board so he could stay in America if he would come to New York. And so he did that. And they put him in the Bronx Zoo. And they made him pose with chimps and other great apes. They treated him like a monkey. And he lasted there for a while. He eventually shot himself. And that sort of thing is terrible, terrible, terrible. But we don't want to erase that. We want to learn from that. You know, we have to learn from those terrible mistakes that we made. And so I don't want to be on a soapbox. I do think that that's one thing that I'm trying to do. And I hope that lots of us will, as we write, preserve a good feeling for what the world is like, or what the world has been, good knowledge of. Yes, off my soapbox.
Well, Ross, again, we would like to thank you very much for coming to join us today. Ross had a little bit of a drive before getting down, but we're all together here at the Traveler's House Coffee and Tea, located on National Avenue in Springfield. Ross, along with the other board members. So it's been a pleasure having you with us. Again, thanks for taking the time, and safe travels to you and your lovely wife, Doris, who is also here with us today.
It's been my pleasure, believe me.
All righty. Well, with that, and again, Ross, before you go, I think John has a check here for you for being with us here today. What we typically give our guest speakers our way of saying thanks and our appreciation. So while John is doing that, we're going to go ahead and get started with our business meeting. I want to ask first, before I go any further, is everybody hearing okay? Is everything good with everybody's connection? Are we all good? What's that?
I think your headset's causing some feedback again.
Okay. Is that a little bit better?
I'm still hearing that.
I don't have my headset on, so I mean, I'm actually better without my headset, but that was mainly so I could hear other people. And
I think it's
unmuted here now.
Through
So.
whoever is on the 573 number.
Yeah.
Whoever's on the 573 number needs to mute.
There we go.
I got it. Good job, Tim.
Okay. So I'm going to assume we're good to go. All righty. As we start, I'm going to go to our secretary's report, our secretary, Matt Henderson. Matt, do we have a quorum today?
Yes.
All righty. Very good. Secretary's report. Matt, anything to share with us?
Not really. We met last week on Zoom and it went well, and so we're doing it again this month, and we're gonna do it again next month.
Yes.
And maybe August as well.
Yes.
But we're working on getting back in September maybe.
Yes, which we will be covering here as we kind of get into a few more things here. So Matt, thank you very much. We're going to go now to the Treasury's report and our Treasurer, John Caulfield.
Hang on just a second. Let me close it. Hang on.
Okay.
Go to somebody else for the moment.
Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and jump to Candy. We're going to give John a little bit of time here to work on some logistics. Candy, update on the summer writing contest.
Okay, we have 9 entries in the contest. We have until July 31st in order to get your story in on a summer worth remembering. So send your story in to Springfield Writers Guild at gmail.com, 750 words or less on any genre. It can be true or it can be fiction, but it needs to be on a summer worth remembering. So you have until the end of July. First place 75, second place 50, third place $25. So it's worth your time. Then also, we have our membership directory is now on our website. So if you want to see who belongs to Springfield Writers Guild, and if you're not there, we need your picture, we need your name, but everybody should be on the website under the directory. It should be under the members tab on the website. That's about it.
Okay, and again, we are doing the membership directory all online this year. In the past, we had done a printed edition, which, just to give a short amount of background there, was quite a task, which usually fell upon a member or two of the board. And also, we had a lot of leftover copies. We never really knew how many people were picking them up, how many people were using them. But all of this is available online and actually allows us probably to say a little bit more about each member, to include a little bit more information, because there's not as much a restriction online as there is in the printed book. We have so much space that we can allocate for it.
I have a link to your website there also. So if you have a website and I don't know about it, let us know so we can put it on there.
And that's the beauty of, also, I might add too, I'm glad Candy said that, we can add anything anytime. It's not like the printed edition. Once it's printed, you can't go back and like, oh, I want to add this, I want to add that. This is continuous, all throughout the months, the years, and so update it as you choose. But yeah, just let us know if there's anything you want to have included. You're part of the website and your membership listing, and we can certainly do that for you. I believe, okay, John, I think John is ready. So want to make sure, this is a treasurer's report.
Hang on. I guess. I think I'm muted. Yeah, I am. Okay, treasurer's report for June 27th. The year is half over. Can anybody believe that the year is half over?
It's great, yeah, no, yeah.
We're heading toward July. Anyway, we have $1,598.49 in the checking account. Our business savings account, which was supposed to take our CD, however, that was right in the middle of COVID, and it didn't happen. So I'll get that taken care of soon. Our CD balance is $1,165.83. PayPal balance is $547.89. Our total assets for the Springfield Writers Guild is $34,12.27. Not bad.
Very good. We're in good shape, folks. Also going to stay with John here. We would like to put out this proposal to the membership to authorize the purchase of a year subscription to Zoom. We have done our last two meetings on Zoom. We had Andrea Mansu, who was with us last month, and Zoom, as we have looked into things, has been a lifesaver in regard to having meetings. Obviously, we're meeting challenged right now as far as being able to meet in person. Today is actually a step in the direction of getting all of us back together, the board, along with our guest speaker, Ross Malone, and his wife. We are all together here at Traveler's House, coffee and tea today in Springfield. But our goal is to increase to where we have all of you back. We're all together just like we were before. But given the circumstance, Zoom is allowing us to do what we're doing right now. We looked at the possibilities of what we could use Zoom for, genre groups, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to let John go ahead and explain a little bit more of this, but he's going to give everybody what our cost is, the 1 month subscription as opposed to the year subscription, and the benefits to our group that Zoom has afforded us and can afford us here in the days ahead.
Thank you, Chris. One of the things I'd like to mention is that there has been one meeting of the Thriller group. I hate to say critique group, but it's a discussion group, the Thriller discussion group. I felt it was successful. Almost everybody that was on that one is online here. So I think it allows us to get into smaller groups for a little bit more in-depth discussion of what we're doing, particularly with writing. So I think if you're in a group or you write in a specific genre that you would like to have for a Zoom meeting, it's a wonderful opportunity. You don't have to drive across town. You don't have to, you get on the meeting, you have the meeting, and then you're done. I honestly think even after this COVID situation is over, we should maintain that, because that allows more and more individuals within our group to have an outlet to discuss the specifics of what they're writing. Steve, I know you were on the meeting. I'm going to unmute you real quick, and then, or you can unmute yourself and just kind of give us an idea of what you accomplished on that last meeting.
Well, it's always nice to get together with people with a common interest and just exchange ideas. But just to be able to ask questions from those who have done more in certain areas like the Audible and all, I love it. It's invaluable to me, and I would even be willing to donate to help maintain that for the year. I think that there's other groups that would love doing it if they would get together and do it. I look forward to our next one. If nothing else, just to see friends that share the same interests and exchange more ideas.
I would add to what Steve's saying is I had the opportunity to beta read Andy's book, which I thoroughly enjoyed, which would not have happened if it wasn't for the genre book or the genre meeting. So yeah, to be able to share things like that is just great.
Well, thanks, Tim and Steve. One of the things I want to mention is that if the Writers Guild decided to buy this as a yearly subscription, we save about $30 a year. It's a $14.99 per month charge versus $100, which amounts to $179.88 a year. If we take out a year subscription, it is only $149.98, I believe, if my math is right. So we're actually saving some money. I think if we utilize this tool more and more over the next 12 months, it will benefit our membership. But that's up to the membership. I'm just raising my hand and saying I think it's worth it.
I would pledge 50 towards that right now.
Yeah, I think, well, you've got a lot of people that are not on the screen, so.
Well, John, basically, we save money if we use it for a full year. If we don't use it for a full year, it's not
valuable. If we use it for a full year and we get the groups, the critique group or the genre groups together, I think it's valuable. We're going to have another Thriller genre meeting in July the 11th. As we're going to try to do it once a month, but the once a month is actually falling on July 4th. So I'm not going to do it then, but we'll now. And let's take, for instance, Tim's not even in Springfield. He's there you are, Tim. Couldn't see you. Tim's in Atlanta. What an opportunity. People can continue to join our meetings from out of town if they're not available. And I think there's opportunities even when we get back to meeting in person. If somebody is out of town, we offer the meeting on Zoom, if we've got it, we might as well use it. Somebody's out of town, they can attend the meeting from Atlanta, Kansas City, St. Louis, wherever they might be on vacation or on business. So
I have a question.
I don't know what else to say.
I've got a quick question, John. Is it our membership available? Like if I wanted to have a particular Zoom meeting with like you or Bill or anybody, are we able to set that up under that membership?
Contact, I can set up those types of meetings on Zoom anytime anybody wants it. And that's the other opportunity. There can be, I'm not going to attend all the genre movie meetings. So all they have to do is contact me. We'll set it up. And they can have their own genre meeting right there. And I don't even have to be involved.
I say we keep it for sure.
To me, it's a no-brainer. I think that these past 2 monthly meetings and the thriller meeting, it's terrific. I mean, I'd rather meet in person, but you know, for the genres, it's perfect. It was great. Huge value.
You can get more of a surgical focus on something within, you get 5 or 6 people together. It's not, you can just focus more on something that's important to you that wouldn't be important to the whole group.
So do you need somebody to make a motion to do this?
Yes.
I so move. I make a motion that we pay for a year on Zoom.
I'll second that.
Second that.
We have a motion and we have a second. I'm going to do it this way. Do we have anybody that is opposed to our, I'll tell you what, folks, what do you think?
I think we've got some people that are muted that are on the phone.
Do we want to utilize the group chat and have everybody vote that?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to utilize the group chat. Folks, at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat window. It says chat. If you would, just please vote yay or nay, whichever you come out on the vote, whatever you decide. Matt is here and he will be tabulating the votes. So, and I see everybody is doing that, so this is working great. So yeah, keep those votes coming. All righty, and I can almost kind of tell here, folks, I think it's looking pretty unanimous here, yeah. So we're gonna say motion carried here. Keep your votes coming if you haven't voted, but yeah, Matt is gonna record those into the official log, the Secretary's report, so do make sure that you cast your vote. Yes, if you're in favor of us taking the year subscription to Zoom. Nay, if you are opposed to that and would not like us to take the year subscription. That said, we're going to move on to our next item of business. Want to give you an update on our July and August meetings. July the 25th will be another Zoom meeting. Our July guest speaker, we've already been in contact with. Her name is Sheila Athens. She is from Georgia, the state of Georgia. She had planned a trip to Missouri. She has relatives and family here in Springfield, but under the circumstances, she is not able to make that trip, but she volunteered herself to do a Zoom meeting, which she has used before. So this ought to be another great situation here for us where our speaker doesn't have to be here in person in the city. And so she has already agreed to do that. So next month, we will do a Zoom meeting with our guest speaker, Sheila Athens. In your newsletter, you saw a little bit about Sheila. She's going to do a very nice presentation here for us. She is a author and book coach. Her topic will be Make Your Story Stronger, Insights from a Book Coach and Developmental Editor. She actually contacted us, was interested in addressing the Guild. If you have a chance to go to her website, look her up online. Her experience is quite extensive. So another great speaker to come our way, and we look forward to having Sheila here with us. August the 22nd, That is a TBD, to be determined. It's probably very likely at this point that that will be a Zoom meeting as well. Our scheduled guest speaker is Jeff Tenney, who recently joined the Springfield Writers Guild. He is one of us. We had a chance to connect with Jeff at the Meet the Authors celebration in Kimberling City back in February, and we look forward to his presentation. His topic is going to be, where does inspiration come from? About our inspiration that drives us to write and do what we do. So looking forward to his session as well. In your newsletter, you also have the other two meetings, September the 26th and October the 24th. September the 26th, we hope that will be our first live meeting back, with everybody being able to meet together just like we had before COVID-19 hit and the lockdown and the restrictions. So our anticipation is that we will have everybody together again on September the 26th. We have a great guest speaker there lined up, David Harrison, who is a poet laureate at Drury University here in Springfield. His topic will be the journey of writing a book from idea to finished project. You can check his website out, also the Drury University website. His experience is vast. He's very excited to address us. He actually goes around different places in the country and speaks at a lot of different group sessions. He is very excited to be with us, one of our own here, David Harrison. And then October 24th, Summer S.V. Farnsworth. She's a college English instructor and author. Her topics will be author motivation and technical writing instruction. She is a member of the Joplin Writers Guild, and she will be our guest speaker October the 24th. That said, we have another proposal today. This is a significant change here for the Guild. This is a proposal to move our monthly meetings from McAllister's Deli, which has been our meeting hub for the past 3 years. And our proposal is to move our monthly meetings from McAllister's Deli to the Springfield Library Center. And of course, that's where we had our first meeting of the year. We had Robin Tidwell, the Missouri Writers Guild president, that was our guest speaker there. That was our biggest turnout of the year, had the room almost completely full. It does have a capacity of 150 people, so it is a rather large sized room. The auditorium, that's where we would be having our meetings. And in the event that the auditorium was not available, there are other rooms throughout the library center that we would be able to use. We have been in contact with Katie Hopkins, who is the person that is in charge of the meeting rooms, the meeting room coordinator. Great conversation with her. Our own Shirley McCann is very well connected with Katie. So Katie has been quite fantastic to work with. And so she has already got our reservation down here for the Library Center, starting with our September meeting. And we would also have the rest of our meetings here for this year that we would be holding there. And so I'm going to, all right, folks, I'm going to need to readjust myself here. My computer is on low battery. It's been on for a little while, so I'm going to plug into an outlet here as I plug in. Make sure that you don't lose me.
You're gonna have to move. There you go.
Okay, thank you for bearing with me. The light saying that I'm about to lose my screen has gone away, so I am on power again, and you're not going to lose me now. So anyway, our proposal here is for us to move our meetings from the Library Center, from McAllister's Deli to the Library Center, and this would be on a permanent basis. The Library Center would become our new home, our new future home for our monthly meetings in the future, starting with our September meeting. So right now, I know this is a little bit new here as far as information. I just hit you with this. So I'm going to open it up for discussion, and anybody that has comments, regarding this proposal, please share with us now.
Some asked if it was 11 o'clock start time.
Yes, we would continue our same start time. The Library Center actually is giving us some additional time at McAllister's. They had been good to us, but we had an issue where if our meeting was running past 2 o'clock, a lot of times we had to be right at the top of the hour because they had other groups coming in. Our reservations with the Library Center, we have been blocked out with a 4-hour block. We have it reserved from 10:30 to 2:30. Our meetings would start at 11, so it gives us a half hour for setup, and then we have the room till 2:30, meaning that if we go past 2 o'clock for our business meeting, then we're not sweating it. We've got plenty of time to do what we need to do, and we're in good shape there. So meetings would continue to be at 11 o'clock through the remainder of this year. If anything changes or we have a proposal for a different meeting time, we would bring that up for discussion at another meeting.
Chris?
Yes.
Yeah. Quick question. Can the, I think it's a much better place to have the meeting. There's more room. Can the cafeteria, or what do they call it, the food service?
The Mud House Cafe.
Can they handle our group?
That is an excellent question. And the answer on that is it would be a challenge. We slammed them when we were there the first time. So here's what we would do. Other groups, there have been other writer groups, the SWG Inc. group, and also Ozark Romance authors in town. They also meet there. A lot of what the other groups would do, and I would say probably other groups that are non-writer groups that meet there. There are a variety of restaurants in the area. You've got everything from Subway to Zaxby's to Freddy's. You've got that whole strip up there along Campbell that is available for people to go and grab something really quick. You're just like a few minutes away, grab your order, bring it back, sit in the meeting room, and you'd be able to eat with everybody else. But yes, the Mud House Cafe, if everybody was wanting to meet with our typical meeting size that we have, the number of people that attend each meeting, we would slam them quite a bit, which is a good problem for them. But there are other venue options, and we are allowed to bring food and beverages from other places into the meeting room. So, well, unlike McAllister's, which understandably so, if you're the management of McAllister's, you don't want people bringing in McDonald's and Burger King and other things into your restaurant. Since we're not meeting in a restaurant, it is acceptable to go and get your own. You're also welcome to bring your own if you want to brown bag it and bring your own with you to the meeting to eat at the time that we break for lunch. That is another possibility. So we've got several options that are available. Again, that's a great question.
Chris?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that SWG Inc.'s meeting, they do their business meeting and then their speaker, and then we're done. And then we just all decide where we want to go to lunch and meet there.
Yeah, and that's another option too. Great point there, Shirley, is, you know, in the future, we can kind of maybe rework our meeting format to possibly get everything done, start maybe at an earlier time, and then adjourn for lunch. Genre groups could meet at that time. We could break into smaller groups. Board, we've actually talked a little bit about that, but that is something that we possibly could propose to you here in the future. But surely, yeah, that works out really well, doesn't it? Yeah, thank you so much.
The only other thought is, would the Mud House be open to catering it?
That's a great question. I'm honestly not sure. I'm not sure what they do for catering. Shirley, do you know anything about catering options through the Mud House?
I don't. We've never tried that. And honestly, they don't have a good selection of food there, which is one reason we like to go somewhere else. They've got like very small sandwiches and, soups, but it's not a good selection.
Yeah, and plus the help, I don't know that they have that many staff members. Usually when we've been there, they have, I think the most I've seen maybe is 2 people. And if you can imagine us being there with 40 to 50 people and 2 people trying to take everybody's order and do these different sandwiches and different menu items. I just say I've worked in the restaurant business before. I wouldn't want to be slammed that way.
Well, there's other options. You can bring a bag, brown bag it, or you can do whatever you want to. I would say just get the venue, try it out, and then we can, if we need to readjust our hours as we go, we can work on that. But right now, let's just, if the membership wants to move to the library.
What about catering option or a box lunch to where everybody chips in $5 and does something like that? Because I know a lot of places will cater.
Yes, and that's something that we might bring. I kind of go along with John there. That's a great suggestion and something that we could look into. Right now, we don't have any catering information available if they even do that, or if, another venue.
Well, I wasn't talking about Pat's. I know they don't, but like Subway or some of the others, Einstein, a lot of them will do catering in, and you put in an order, they bring it, and then you break up the cost, $5 a person, $7 a person, whatever,
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I'm going to suggest, I'm going to actually make a note of that. We will look into the catering option. We can try to discuss that here at our next meeting, but we will check into catering, see what options are available, and see what the group might want to do. Anybody else? Are we ready to vote?
I make a motion, we do move to the library as proposed.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Folks, like we did before when we were doing the vote on the usage of the Zoom subscription, please, and everybody's doing it on your group chat, give a yay if you approve, nay if you are against. And I'm seeing a lot of yays here. So, folks, one thing I might want to say, McAllister's has been very good to us. We've had some complications from time to time, but this is in no way saying that we are dissatisfied with McAllister's or that they have been trying to push us out the door or anything. The Library Center, just quite honestly, provides us a lot more options, food options. They have a PA system there, which I think is something that we have kind of needed and that we will utilize while we were there at the Library Center for folks in the back to be able to hear and communicate. Sometimes we have somebody with a low voice that comes up when it's their turn to speak. We've got audiovisual options there that are fantastic. There's a big screen that's there for our presentations, for PowerPoint, and other things that we might want to use it for. And plus, obviously, the seating size. McAllister's, one of the big considerations that we looked at here is that our meetings that we have had there here recently, February being our most recent one, we have been pushing the envelope for capacity to where we would never want to have somebody sitting outside or say like, I'm sorry, we're full, glad that you came, but you can't sit with us because we just don't have, we can't put more than this number of people in the room. So the Library Center, the auditorium is 150 person capacity. That will never be an issue for us. So everything from the amenities, audiovisual, capacity, options available for food and beverage. We have a lot of flexibility there.
I'll definitely chime in on that in support of that. I've presented there a whole bunch, and it's a fantastic room to present in.
That's the only way.
It looks like it's unanimous.
And they won't have it right away.
September's
Yeah.
what they said earlier.
Yes. By the way, the votes come in. It looks like it is a unanimous vote to move from McAllister's to the Library Center. So thank you everybody for participating in that. Why our September 5th or our September meeting? The library, due to COVID-19 restrictions, is unable to reopen their meeting rooms until that time. That was the earliest they were able to give us. If they were able to have the meeting rooms open, we could have done our July meeting there and we could have done our August meeting there. But they have to follow the state guidelines, the restrictions that are set down upon them. And so barring any changes, and folks, we kind of know this is all kind of on the fly with COVID-19, things are subject to change, but barring any changes, September is our first open date, and they have welcomed us to start September and then continue through the rest of the year. We will be doing our reservations. All groups have to reserve on a 6-month basis. So September is actually when we need to make our decision for our January and June meetings to schedule those. And then March 1st is when they start booking for the period July through December. So they do those in 6-month increments. And as long as we stay in front of that and we get our reservation in right when they start taking bookings, we should be just fine.
Monica wants to know, should we do some kind of thank you to
Monica, absolutely. Absolutely. We are reserved through the rest of the year at McAllister's, and I think that is 100% appropriate on our part to thank them for these past 3 years. They were a lifesaver. I know Yvonne, when she was our president, remember when we got the note that the Heritage Cafeteria, our previous longtime meeting place, had closed down. We're kind of like in a quandary, like, what are we going to do? Where the heck are we going to go? And a lot of choices were looked at. But McAllister's was the one that said, yeah, we've got a meeting room and we would love to have you. And so that's been our home here for the past 3 years. And 100% we will do a thank you to McAllister's. They were there when we needed them. And so we are gonna send them some appreciation. Thank you very much for bringing that up. Folks, anything else regarding the meeting room and upcoming meetings? Anything else on that vein? Okay, if not, I've got a couple of other items here, and then we're going to go to kudos, old business. Would like to put out there, this is not something we're going to vote on, but with what we have going with Zoom now, would we like to try to incorporate a mentor hour into our Zoom meetings? Is that something that we could possibly have submissions we could read online, kind of like Ross's PowerPoint, and we're able to do open comment and discussion via Zoom that we have done in person? Discussion.
Well, just a thought, it sounds like it would be something where maybe we could email ahead of time, you know, whatever it is that we want to submit, and then that way people could read it online and try to do it that way. That's just my suggestion.
Yeah, that's got some thumbs up here from some of the other board members. Great suggestion, Tim. Anybody else?
I've missed not having it, so yeah, I'd like to utilize that option. So.
Absolutely. If we do that, we'd extend an invitation to Nick to join us here in person and kind of get him back into his coordinator duties. He needs to be put back to work anyway. So. So I'm hearing a positive feedback on this. Emailing is a great way. Everybody knows, I guess, what our email is: Springfield Writers Guild at gmail.com. Do you want to remember that there is no apostrophe after the S in the email address, so it is just straight Springfield Writers Guild at gmail.com. And so what we can do is we can send out an email. Candy gets those out for us, and we can probably describe a little bit more about the submission process, what we would recommend, and then maybe see if we can put that together here for next meeting. All righty. And then a couple other things, and folks, we're done. Thank you for bearing with me here. Want to remind everybody, the Missouri Writers Guild, their annual meeting normally is in person. That's obviously not possible right now. They normally hold it here May or June. Well, they have moved it to a Zoom meeting that will be coming up here next month in July. It's going to be 7:00 p.m. Wednesday, July the 15th. This will be online via Zoom. If you go to the Missouri Writers Guild Facebook page, there is a link that you would be able to use to join the annual meeting. They have a guest speaker lined up, and they're going to be discussing everything Missouri Writers Guild. We are the Springfield Writers Guild. We, of course, are one of their statewide affiliates, so would like to encourage as many of you as possible, whether you are a Missouri Writers Guild member or not. This would be good information for you to be able to take in, not just for hearing the guest speaker, but to learn a little bit more about the Missouri Writers Guild, which we are affiliated with. Robin Tidwell, as you may remember, she was our very first guest speaker of the year. She is the president of the Missouri Writers Guild, and she, of course, will be leading the annual meeting here as well. I was at the annual meeting last year in St. Louis in person. The Guild is looking to kind of grow itself, the state Guild. So again, I'd like to encourage all of you to participate if you can. And again, that's 7 p.m. Wednesday, July 15th. Go to the Missouri Writers Guild Facebook page. You'll see the little pop-up ad that has the link for the meeting and other information that is useful for you to be able to participate in that. That said, I'm going to go to old business. Is there any old business of any kind? Anybody have anything? Old business from the past? I don't know of any, and the board's not really saying that we have anything there, so I think we pretty well covered that. Last two items, kudos. I know we have some kudos, so everybody share what's been going on with you. We want to hear. Katie Bennett, I know for one.
Yeah, I'm always shy about sharing mine. I had a short story featured on the Manawaker podcast this month, and then I had my first ever podcast author interview with what's called the Guild podcast. So I was really scared, but I did it.
I launched my first debut novel this week, so it's now out on Amazon. And many thanks to John for guiding me in how I got there.
Congratulations, Andy.
It's finally out there, and I pushed out about 4,000 impressions this week by email and LinkedIn and Facebook, and hopefully we'll see lots of sales.
Absolutely. Andy, again, congratulations.
It was more work to get it published than it was to write it.
Are we ready? Ready to go? Okay. I will be retiring from my day job on July 31st and will become a full-time author on August 1st. Nobody's happier than me.
Congratulations, John. You deserve it.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
That is awesome.
John, you
I'm
ought
jealous.
to set up a consulting business for helping all the help you've given us through the years.
That's something I enjoy doing, Tim.
Well, thank you.
Other kudos.
I am going to be doing an audible with John's narrator, Paul McSorley. He's going to start on it in 3 months, and hopefully it'll be all ready with my release in November.
Fantastic.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that.
That is fantastic. Any others? Candy, I was thinking you had something. Runaway? No. Okay. All righty. Well, folks, if there are other kudos that we haven't heard about, if you maybe weren't wanting to necessarily share out in person, which is your prerogative, we love to hear your successes, and that's what this time is all about. But any other kudoses, or if you know of somebody that has some that is not here with us today, if you could get those to Candy Simonson, and to Matt Henderson. Matt, for the records, he's our secretary. Candy does our newsletter and publicity. So if you could make those two individuals aware of what's going on, that would be fantastic. That helps them, because the more information they have, the less they have to search for. So you're making their job easy by the full scoop out there. And those of you that shared, if you could also email us here at springfieldwritersguild.com, and then you have Candy's email and Matt's email as well. You can do it that way. If you send it to the Springfield Writers Guild email address, that gets to everybody. All board members have access to that, so that works out really, really well. That said, kudos. A reminder, our next meeting will be July the 25th. 11 a.m. As I mentioned before, Sheila Athens, author and book coach, will be our guest speaker. Make Your Story Stronger, Insights from a Book Coach and Developmental Editor. She will be with us at that time via Zoom, so we'll do what we just did here today. The newsletter will have a little bit more about Sheila, her information, who she is, what she does, what she's accomplished. So be on the lookout for the monthly newsletter via your emails. And then aside from that, that is all that I have. Is there anything in concluding that anybody has that we would wrap up with here today? Anybody have anything else? Okay. I think we're in a pretty good place here. So that said, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn our meeting. Folks, thank you all for joining us here today. Again, July the 25th, our next meeting, same time at 11 o'clock a.m. We'll be joining you in person as we are here today. The board will be together. And then any questions that you have here in the meantime, our email, Springfield Writers Guild at gmail.com. And then again, be on the lookout, check Facebook, check the Springfield Writers Guild page, springfieldwritersguild.org, our website, and keep in touch. As you've seen in my presidential messages, right on. So thank you very much, everybody.
Good seeing y'all.
Bye.